Okay, today we pause for a moment, away from the endless scroll, the noise of notifications and the quiet ache that lingers when success still feels incomplete. Have you ever noticed how easily joy slips away once the applause fades? Or when what you've earned no longer feels enough? We chase more, yet feel less. Welcome to Stoic Dhama, a space where we explore the calm center within chaos, guided by the timeless wisdom of Stoic philosophy. Here, we slow down, reflect, and rediscover what it means to live with balance, clarity, and peace of mind. Today, we dive into one of the most profound ideas in Stoic thought. Real happiness begins from within, and never from outside things. A truth whispered through centuries, waiting for you to rediscover it. Not in the world around you, but in the stillness of your own mind. In a world built on constant movement, we are taught to measure life by accumulation. More money, more recognition, more proof that we are enough. Yet, beneath the glow of achievement, a quiet unease hums, the sense that something essential still escapes us. You can see it everywhere, in the hurried glances of commuters, in the restless tapping of screens, in the unspoken fatigue behind every forced smile. We have been told that happiness waits on the other side of effort, that once we earn, acquire, or impress enough, peace will naturally follow. But what if that peace never arrives? What if the chase itself is the reason it stays just out of reach? From here we turn to an older wisdom, one that predates our age of digital noise and endless comparison. The Stoics, centuries ago, saw through the same illusion that grips modern life. To them, the pursuit of external happiness was a mirage, a shimmering promise that vanishes the closer you approach. They believed that happiness was not something to find, but something to realize, a condition of the soul, already present, yet hidden beneath layers of desire and fear. Now imagine this. You wake up one morning, and everything you've built, your home, your career, your reputation, is gone. What remains? In that silence, what would define you? The Stoic answer is simple. What remains is who you truly are. The mind, when trained to stand firm amidst loss, becomes unshakable. Seneca once observed that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The illusion of outer happiness amplifies this suffering. We picture what we lack, compare it to what others have, and let those comparisons rule our peace. Yet those who anchor their joy to things outside themselves are like sailors trusting the wind instead of the rudder. The storm inevitably will come. The ancient city of Rome once glittered with wealth beyond measure. Marble temples, gold statues, vast arenas filled with cheering crowds, all symbols of human triumph. Yet the greatest minds of that era, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, all warned that such abundance was a test, not a blessing. They saw that external wealth could decorate life, but never define it. Because no matter how high one climbs, the summit always reveals another mountain. Think of Marcus Aurelius himself, emperor of the most powerful empire of his time. Surrounded by luxury, he wrote nightly reminders to his own soul, urging restraint, humility, and calm. He ruled the known world, yet understood that control over others means nothing without control over oneself. His journals, written in moments of solitude, are not the words of a conqueror, but of a man seeking stillness. He realized that all external victories fade, but inner clarity endures. Now consider the world we live in today. The temples have become skyscrapers. The cheering crowds have moved online. We build digital kingdoms, counting followers instead of citizens, likes instead of loyalty. The illusion has evolved, but its essence remains unchanged. We still seek happiness in places it cannot exist. This illusion is subtle. It convinces us that discomfort is a problem to be fixed with consumption. It tells us that sadness means failure, that stillness is laziness, that self-worth can be calculated by comparison. And so we chase, endlessly, breathlessly, only to find that the more we possess, the more fragile our peace becomes. But the Stoics invite us to look deeper. They ask, if every external thing can vanish, what within you cannot? What remains when you strip away wealth, beauty, status, and praise? They believed that this remaining essence, the reasoned soul, is where true happiness resides. It is the part of you untouched by fortune's cruelty or time's decay. Epictetus, born into slavery, knew this truth intimately. He had nothing by society's measure, no property, no power, no freedom, yet spoke of joy that no master could steal. His philosophy was simple. Focus only on what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your character, and you will be free, no matter your circumstance. It was not a denial of the world, but a mastery of it through the mastery of self. From here, we turn to you. Reflect on your own moments of contentment. When have you felt most at peace? Was it truly because of something you gained, or because you stopped reaching, even for a brief moment, and simply were? Real happiness, the Stoics remind us, is not achieved by grasping, but by releasing. There's another layer to this truth, one that transcends culture and era. Ancient Hindu philosophy spoke of the Atman, the inner self, the unchanging witness behind all experience. In many ways, this mirrors Stoic thought. Happiness arises when we remember who we are beyond our possessions, beyond the shifting story of life. Both traditions point inward, to the calm observer within the storm. Now imagine walking through a museum filled with relics from past civilizations, coins once prized, crowns once worshipped, monuments built for eternity. All that remains are silent stones, stripped of their owners. The lesson is clear. The things we chase will someday belong to dust, but the capacity for inner peace, for conscious presence, belongs eternally to those who choose it. So perhaps happiness was never missing. Perhaps it was waiting, quietly, beneath the noise of wanting. The Stoic path begins with this realization. Nothing outside you can give what already exists within. If we could unlearn the constant reaching, if we could meet each moment with calm attention, life itself would soften. Each breath would carry a sense of enoughness, not because the world has changed, but because our perception has. The illusion of outer happiness will always call to us, through advertisement, comparison, ambition. Yet each time you pause, breathe, and return to your center, that illusion weakens. You begin to see it not as a failure of the world, but as a test of awareness. True happiness, then, is not a destination but a direction, inward. It is cultivated through stillness, strengthened by reflection, and revealed in the quiet moments when the mind no longer chases. And so the question remains, if everything outside can be taken away, what within you endures? The Stoics would say, your reason, your virtue, your ability to see clearly, that and only that is the root of lasting peace. When you begin to understand this, you no longer cling to outcomes or fear loss. You move through life lighter, calmer, freer, because your happiness is no longer hostage to the world's uncertainty. From here, we turn to the wisdom of those who lived and taught this truth, the Stoic masters who proved, through words and through life, that inner freedom is the highest form of wealth. From here, we turn to the origin of this enduring insight, to the ancient streets of Greece and Rome, where philosophy was not confined to classrooms, but lived daily through the choices of ordinary men. The idea that real happiness begins from within was not born from comfort or ease. It emerged from lives tempered by adversity, loss, and impermanence. Among the Stoic masters, three voices echo through time: Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. Their lives could not have been more different. A slave, a senator, and an emperor. Yet all three arrived at the same truth. No external thing, however grand, can dictate the peace of one's soul. Epictetus was born into slavery in the 1st century CE. He owned nothing, not even his own body. Yet from his confinement arose a wisdom that would shape Western thought for centuries. He taught that the key to freedom lies not in changing the world, but in changing how we perceive it. His Enchiridion, a concise manual for life, opens with a simple but radical distinction. Some things are within our control, and others are not. The things within our control are our opinions, our desires, our actions. Everything else, Wealth, reputation, even health, belongs to fate. Imagine hearing that truth in a world where power was everything. For Epictetus, serenity was an inner rebellion against circumstance. He believed that by mastering our reactions, we become invincible, because nothing external can harm a mind that refuses to yield its peace. This is not detachment born of apathy, but of awareness, a clear understanding that peace is lost not by events, but by our interpretation of them. Seneca, by contrast, lived at the center of luxury and danger, a statesman, a playwright, and a tutor to Nero, the most unpredictable ruler of Rome. While surrounded by opulence, Seneca saw clearly the emptiness behind material abundance. His letters to Lucilius, written in exile and under threat of death, reveal a man stripped of illusions. "We suffer," he wrote, "not from the events themselves, but from our judgment about them." For Seneca, philosophy was medicine for the soul. He compared the mind to a ship tossed by waves. Wisdom was the anchor. No wealth or power could substitute for the ability to remain calm when life's tempests arrive. He urged his students to practice voluntary discomfort, sleeping on the ground, fasting, wearing simple clothes, to remind themselves that happiness does not depend on comfort. Such exercises, he believed, build resilience, so that when misfortune inevitably comes, it finds us already prepared. Then came Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most paradoxical figure in philosophical history, a ruler of the known world who spent his nights writing reminders to his own heart. His meditations, composed while leading military campaigns, are a dialogue between a man and his conscience. Though surrounded by soldiers, wealth, and advisors, Marcus turned inward for guidance. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." It was not a slogan, but a survival truth. The empire he governed was vast, unstable, filled with war and plague. Yet his words reflect a mind untouched by chaos, a steady light within darkness. His practice of daily reflection mirrors what we now call mindfulness, observing thoughts without judgment, acknowledging emotion without surrendering to it. What connects these Stoic masters is not doctrine, but discipline. Each practiced a kind of spiritual craftsmanship, shaping their inner lives with the same care an artist gives to marble. They viewed philosophy not as theory, but as a technique, a craft of living. Every emotion, every setback, every moment of fortune was raw material to be refined into virtue. Now imagine walking through ancient Athens or Rome, hearing their ideas echo in the marketplace and the Senate hall alike. Philosophy was a living dialogue, not an academic pursuit. People studied not to argue but to become better human beings, calmer, wiser, freer. This is why Stoicism has survived when so many schools of thought have faded. It speaks directly to the condition of the human heart. The Stoics understood that to base happiness on the external world is to build on shifting sand. Wealth disappears, praise turns to criticism. Bodies grow frail, and love, even the deepest, can be lost. But the mind, when trained, can remain unshaken. This is what Marcus, Seneca, and Epictetus each discovered in their own way. That peace is not the absence of pain, but the mastery of perspective. Their teachings ripple far beyond their time. Modern psychology, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, draws heavily from Stoic insights. The central idea that we cannot control events, only our interpretation, is now the foundation of therapeutic practice. The Stoics anticipated this 2 millennia ago, crafting a framework of emotional resilience, still valid in the age of anxiety and overexposure. But there's another layer to their wisdom, one that touches on spiritual universality. When Epictetus taught that the divine resides within reason itself, he echoed the idea of the Atman in ancient Hindu thought, the inner self, a fragment of the eternal. Likewise, Marcus's reflections often sound like verses from the Bhagavad Gita, urging detachment from results and devotion to right action. Across continents and centuries, the same truth resounds. What is unshaken within us is our real home. From here, we can see that Stoicism was never about denial or coldness. It was about alignment, the art of harmonizing inner life with outer reality. The Stoic seeks not to escape the world, but to walk through it with calm understanding, to love without clinging, to act without expectation, to endure without bitterness. In a sense, the Stoic masters were explorers of consciousness. They mapped the landscape of human emotion long before psychology had a name. They saw the mind as both the source of suffering and the key to liberation. By training attention, simplifying desires, and focusing on virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control, they built a philosophy of inner freedom that transcends time. The lessons they left behind remain deeply practical. When anger arises, they would have us pause and question its root. When loss strikes, they remind us that what truly matters cannot be taken. When fear visits, they invite us to meet it with reason, not resistance. Every challenge becomes an opportunity for mastery, every storm a mirror to test our depth. And so, the wisdom of the Stoic masters is not an artifact of the past, but a living guide. It whispers through the centuries. Happiness is not something you chase. It is something you cultivate, patiently, intentionally within. From here, we turn to the next question. How can these timeless teachings move from the pages of philosophy into the rhythm of daily life? How do we practice what they preached moment by moment in a modern world that rewards distraction more than reflection? From here, we move from wisdom to action, from the marble temples of philosophy to the living pulse of everyday life. It is one thing to understand the Stoic ideal of inner peace. It is another to live it while surrounded by noise, ambition, and endless comparison. This is where philosophy becomes real, in the quiet moments between frustration and reaction, between wanting and accepting. Every human life is a balance between the external and the internal. We wake up, check messages, measure ourselves by the pace of others. The modern world rewards motion, not reflection. Yet the Stoics remind us that wisdom begins not with speed, but with stillness. To pause before responding, to breathe before judging, to choose before reacting. These are small acts of inner freedom, repeated daily, that transform the ordinary into the sacred. Now imagine a morning guided by Stoic discipline. Before the rush begins, you sit with pen and paper, the ritual of morning journaling. Marcus Aurelius did this each day, not to display virtue but to remind himself of it. He wrote of patience before facing people, of humility before command, of mortality before pride. You do the same. Write what you can control today, what you must accept, and what deserves your gratitude. This small act roots your attention in what is real, your intention, not your outcome. In work, the Stoic practice is not indifference, but focus. You do your best not for praise, but for integrity. When a project succeeds, you celebrate quietly. When it fails, you reflect calmly. Praise and blame become passing weather, not storms to be feared. You learn to act with excellence, but without attachment, as the Bhagavad Gita once echoed. You have the right to your labor, but not to the fruits of it. Relationships, too, become gentler under Stoic light. To love without owning, to care without clinging. This is a subtle strength. When others disappoint you, remember that they are governed by their own perceptions just as you are. Seneca once wrote that we must accept human nature as we accept the seasons, not with resentment, but with understanding. The Stoic does not withdraw from affection. They purify it, turning love into compassion rather than possession. But perhaps the deepest practice lies within the self, the art of accepting what cannot be changed. Every day brings moments that test our patience. Traffic, illness, misunderstanding, loss. The untrained mind resists, demands that the world conform. The Stoic mind observes, adapts, and endures. This acceptance is not defeat, it is clarity. It recognizes that peace grows not from control, but from alignment with reality. One of the most profound exercises of Stoicism is negative visualization. It may sound grim, but its purpose is gratitude. You imagine losing what you love, your home, your health, your loved ones, not to invite sorrow, but to awaken appreciation. By contemplating impermanence, you stop taking presence for granted. Each moment becomes a gift already slipping away. In this awareness, joy deepens, not diminishes. From here we can see how Stoic practice mirrors mindfulness in modern psychology, the observation of thought without identification. When anger rises, you watch it instead of becoming it. When anxiety appears, you note it, breathe through it, and let it pass like a cloud. The goal is not to erase emotion, but to master response. Epictetus said that no one is free unless they can command themselves, and this begins with awareness. To bring Stoic philosophy into daily rhythm, reflection is essential. At night, before sleep, return to the day as Marcus did. Review your actions without judgment. Where did I lose my calm? Where did I live according to reason? What could I improve tomorrow? This nightly dialogue with yourself is not guilt. It is growth. You become both teacher and student, sculptor and stone. The world around you may not change, but your relationship with it will. External noise softens when inner silence strengthens. Each challenge becomes training for the soul, an opportunity to test patience, to practice courage, to refine perspective. The Stoic life is not one of escape, but of engagement, meeting the world fully, yet remaining inwardly unshaken. Now imagine your daily routine transformed by these small, quiet disciplines. A morning of gratitude instead of comparison. A conversation guided by understanding instead of reaction. A night of reflection instead of regret. Bit by bit, the inner landscape shifts. You stop chasing happiness as a distant prize and begin cultivating it as a present state. This, the Stoics would say, is how philosophy becomes embodied. Not in grand gestures, but in micro moments of awareness. The way you answer an email, the way you respond to criticism, the way you greet uncertainty, all become expressions of your philosophy. But there's another layer here, one that bridges ancient thought with modern neuroscience. Studies now show that gratitude journaling rewires the brain toward positivity, that visualization enhances emotional regulation, that reflection strengthens self-control. The Stoics, without the language of science, intuited these truths through lived experience. They trained their minds as one trains a muscle, through repetition, attention, and purpose. And so, the challenge of Stoicism is not to suppress emotion, but to direct it, to transform fear into vigilance, anger into justice, desire into discipline. Each emotion, when understood, becomes energy reclaimed. Each moment of awareness becomes a step toward freedom. The path is not quick nor easy, but as Seneca reminded us, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. Every frustration, every disappointment, becomes the forge where character is shaped. From here we turn again to reflection. The Stoic does not ask for a lighter burden, but for stronger shoulders. They seek not escape, but endurance, not comfort, but clarity. Their peace is not a fragile calm that depends on still waters. It is a deep current that flows beneath the storm. In time, these practices, morning journaling, negative visualization, nightly reflection, form a rhythm of presence. They train the mind to stand firm amidst chaos, to find joy not after struggle, but within it. And when this becomes habit, happiness is no longer an achievement. It is a state of being. From here, we look to those who carried this torch into modern times. Individuals who proved that Stoic wisdom is not relic but resource, still alive in the way we lead, create, and endure. Centuries have passed since the words of Marcus Aurelius and Seneca echoed through the marble halls of Rome. Yet their wisdom remains alive, not as relics of philosophy, but as maps for modern minds. The Stoic call to find happiness within, to master the self rather than the world, continues to resonate in the hearts of those who face the chaos of our age. And perhaps never before has this message been more needed than now. In a world where attention is currency, and the soul is easily sold for validation, Ryan Holiday, one of the most influential modern voices of Stoicism, has spent years translating ancient wisdom into practical tools for our digital century. Through his works, The Daily Stoic and The Obstacle is the Way, Holiday reminds us that Stoicism is not an abstract ideal, but a method of living. He speaks of discipline, perspective, and resilience, qualities that anchor us when the waves of ambition and anxiety crash too hard. Holiday often cites Marcus Aurelius' principle, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." For him, this single sentence is a manual for modern life. Ryan's personal journey reflects this belief. Before writing about Stoicism, he was a marketing strategist, immersed in the constant pursuit of success and recognition. But it was the stillness of Stoic reflection that shifted his path. He learned that the greatest victories are not public, but private. Moments when one chooses calm over anger, purpose over distraction, and patience over impulse. His story is a mirror of our own, each of us fighting invisible battles within, each capable of winning them once we learn to master ourselves. Yet perhaps one of the most powerful modern examples of Stoic strength is found not in a writer-ish calm study, but in the darkest corners of human endurance, the story of Admiral James Stockdale. During the Vietnam War, Stockdale was captured and held as a prisoner of war for over 7 years. Tortured, isolated, and uncertain of survival, he turned to the teachings of Epictetus to sustain his mind. He reminded himself daily, "You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond." In the silence of captivity, Stoicism became more than philosophy. It became survival. Stockdale later described how the principle of focusing only on what lies within one's control helped him maintain dignity, leadership, and even hope amid despair. He protected his inner freedom when all outer freedoms were stripped away. His endurance was not denial, but defiance, the quiet rebellion of the mind that refuses to surrender. This same resilience, this quiet strength, is what the Stoics wish to awaken in all of us. You may never face imprisonment or war, but you will face loss, uncertainty, and disappointment. Each moment offers the same test. Will you allow circumstance to dictate your peace, or will you claim it from within? In this sense, modern Stoicism is not about withdrawing from life. It is about engaging it with clarity. It teaches that true strength lies in emotional mastery, not emotional absence. The Stoic feels deeply, but chooses wisely. They experience pain, but refuse to amplify it through resistance. They celebrate joy, yet remain grounded when it fades. Consider how this perspective applies to today's culture of instant gratification. We are surrounded by metrics of worth, likes, views, followers, external symbols that whisper promises of happiness. But as the Stoics warn, dependence on the external is dependence on illusion. Ryan Holiday often reminds readers that chasing validation is the fastest path to misery. If happiness depends on approval, it is never ours to keep. Instead, the Stoic way invites us to reverse the search, to look inward, not outward, to ask not, "What can the world give me?" but "What can I cultivate within myself?" In that shift, we begin to understand freedom, the kind that cannot be taken because it was never borrowed. History, philosophy, and psychology all converge here. When we control the mind, we control life. The Buddha called it mastery of self. Epictetus called it discipline of desire. Marcus Aurelius called it living according to nature. Modern science calls it emotional regulation and resilience. Different names for the same truth, that happiness is not an event, but a skill. The invitation, then, is to practice. To live deliberately. To recognize that you cannot choose every circumstance, but you can always choose your response. The person who can remain calm when insulted, steady when praised, and compassionate when tested, that person has discovered true power. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, in this ever-changing world, where opinions shift and fortunes rise and fall, are you placing your happiness in the hands of others? Are you allowing your peace to depend on outcomes you cannot command? The Stoics would urge us to reclaim that power, to bring happiness back home to the mind. They would remind us that the world is not kind or cruel. It simply is. Our interpretation, our judgment gives it meaning. And in mastering those judgments, we master ourselves. In this way, Stoicism does not remove us from life's storms. It teaches us how to stand firm within them. It shows us that peace is not found by escaping turbulence, but by learning to sail through it with steady hands. So perhaps the question is no longer how can I find happiness, but how can I create it, moment by moment, through the way I think, act, and see. And maybe in realizing that happiness was never something to chase, we finally begin to live it, quietly, consistently, from the inside out. Because when you learn to control your mind, you no longer need to control the world. Stoic philosophy does not teach us to escape life. It teaches us to live it fully, with freedom in the mind and peace in the heart. It reminds us that the true battle is never against the world, but against our own unguarded thoughts. When you stop searching for happiness in the noise outside, you begin to notice something subtle yet profound. It was always within you, waiting to be awakened. Each moment of awareness, each calm breath in the middle of chaos, is a quiet return home to yourself. If you find meaning in these reflections and wish to deepen your Stoic journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stoic Dhama. In our next episode, we'll explore how Stoic habits help you build discipline and focus, practical ways to strengthen the mind and live with purpose.